Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey yo, can you hear me?
Hey, how you doing? I can hear you.
Okay, let's see. Camera is covered by that. And as usual, gotta blind myself at half the
Is that your beauty light or what?
yeah. I gotta
Properly
otherwise the
illuminated.
lighting in here kind of awful because it's behind me, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I know. I kind of got the same thing going. I'm trying to get a work light up here to get some kind of bounce of light. I should probably close these shutters actually.
what if it works actually? It doesn't work backwards very well. Yeah. Yeah, so I just have a light that I stick on my computer here. Warm, cool, and cool's too cool.
Oh, how do you do that? That's the light itself or your computer settings?
It's a light.
Oh, you just adjust color temperature on the light. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just got three settings and a bunch of brightness settings, and I'll just blind myself with that for the whole duration.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Uh,
Well, did you guys do anything major on the questions, or is it kind of just how it was when we were done talking with it?
just how it was. We got done talking with it.
Okay.
Let's see um. I guess we didn't get you any like notes really, but there wasn't really much else to do. I got
Okay.
pictures um for Brian Trippy showing the wiring
Oh,
stuff.
nice, nice.
Um and let's see David's thing with the venting. I guess I can probably just like share the screens. You can see what pictures I have. Um okay, so we have a couple roofing questions. So just gonna kind of put in here some stuff like showing what the roofing manual shows people, um,
Yep.
so that if they have this, they can give it to people, and then it actually shows how it should be lined up, where the overlaps are, and stuff like that. Uh,
Nice.
and then yeah, how to put on felt paper, quote unquote, right? Um,
Yeah. Well,
but
that's a good opportunity to talk too about that. So many nice synthetic felts that, this needs to be updated. But it's all that logic's still the same though.
yeah. Um, Yeah, Brian Trippy. This is that the May, I don't know, I remember what it is. Uh anyway, their dome,
Yep.
which apparently they had to sell in 2019. They sent the email. The original owner's just old and had to go into a home or something. So
Oh,
2019 they had to sell it. And then the venting one, like should they vent or not, and kind of just like the our values on spray foam and stuff. And I don't know if these pictures again kind of show any if we care at all about like the super wall and kind of how where that would go in. Maybe it's just something to show people as we're talking about it.
mhm.
Let's see. Celia had most of the questions, so it's kind of going over the harness situation and kind of what it's like to walk on top of that and the sort of drop off. Again, like tools you might need for putting in skylights. Kind of illustration for other people of what a what these might look like.
You like up here? Okay.
Also, also the kind of bracing that would have to go if it's going to be like far above the ground, which I'm not so sure now. Like if it's just going to be on these screws, it might actually just be close to the ground, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
uh,
don't know what the height. I guess I don't know if it's 2 feet or higher. You got to have cross bracing. I guess I don't, honestly, I don't know that for sure.
yeah,
Of course, the higher you go up, the more at risk it is of movement. So you need to kind of brace it. But I guess I don't know what the minimum is.
yeah. Showing here maybe something that's over a rocky situation. It's like, well, yeah, what do you do? Well, you need some kind of a crane or some kind of tools to be able to, or a deck or something. If you're high up of a rocky sort of cliff.
Yeah.
The idea here of can you lift it up and build it? I mean, you can, the crane can lift it and then you can put stuff underneath it.
Remember that guy that was trying to figure out a way to fix that one lady's dome? It was like his neighbor lady. And she had a leaky dome and her husband left her and it was her and the kid. Do you remember that at all?
Oh, is that the one where they wanted to build the dome over the dome?
Yeah, that's this guy right here that you're showing the pictures of right there.
Oh, it's actually them.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. No, I take that back. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. Sorry.
You actually see it back there?
Yeah.
I guess I'm in the way, but you could kind of maybe if I got up.
Yeah. No, that's not the one. I thought for a second that was a 26-foot diameter music dome, but it's not. So sorry. I was off.
Let's see.
I'm gonna blame it on my 13-inch monitor.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Maybe this was like an idea of like to leave out the tips so that you can, I don't know, or how you could drag them up. I don't know. Or how you can leave out the tips so you can step on those spots or something. Maybe it's not a good picture of that, but it's something.
Yeah.
And apparently the Zoila about questions about where you can find domes for sale. This was in my last thing, so maybe she didn't join the last one and she just submitted the question again.
That's definitely possible. I think a lot of times they do the questions, but it's not uncommon for them not to be at that dome talk. So yeah, that could have just been her like, oh shoot, I missed it. And then instead of looking for it online, she just resubmits it. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, as long as you got it done, I guess that's something quick and easy then.
Yep. Okay, so those are the pictures. Really, I mean, isn't much to it on this one. I think the more interesting one is probably Trippy's um thing. The rest of it's just kind of
Might be a half hour trip.
yeah, I guess you could.
Hey Dennis, as long as you're there, and speaking of Trippy, I got a picture to show you here with one of his questions. Let's see, where is he? There he is. I don't know if you can see this at all, Dennis, but he was asking about how to finish,
Yeah.
how to frame up that corner of the riser wall and the extension arch. And I was gonna tell him just to follow that inner 2x4 on the riser wall until you meet the inner 2x4 of the arch, and that would be the corner, but I thought I'd show you in case you had a better idea.
We got a neat picture from Paul Bewer. It shows that detail, and it shows an open triangle kind of framed for a shelf.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, because he asked me about that, and I said, well, let me see if I can find he asked if we had a picture of anything. I said, I'll look into it and see. So that just was today that he sent that. So if you know where that is, I mean, if he's gonna jump on Dome Talk, that might be something we could, not that I have to show him during Dome Talk, but you could text it to me and I'll send it to Trippy. But
Yeah,
if you have something handy, that'd be great.
this has got it.
Okay,
It's got it.
cool.
And I can get it from her. She
Okay,
can-
yeah, that'll work. Or did you say Tessa has it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I can text her for it if she would know what it is, but you'd probably be better talking to her about it.
She will.
Explaining.
Well, she will, but she won't have the right picture.
Okay. Nice, nice. This should be a pretty easy Dome Talk, I think.
Yeah,
So far only 5 people in the waiting room. Usually there's more, but I'll give it a few minutes.
And Josh is he still at the office or did he go home?
Yeah, Josh is here. And I
Okay.
just he joined, but I didn't admit him. I just clicked the admit button, so he probably has to click a button on his side, but
Okay,
he's still here to
cool.
do the thing.
All right, well, I got those original questions I'll have on my phone so I can kind of follow you guys. Just gonna go from top to bottom.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and oh, there's Josh. Yeah, so he's got that, and I gotta get the
Hey Josh, how's it going?
giving me full view.
Well, I think you're muted still, maybe.
Okay. So shared. Mm,
There we go.
Oh, all right, nice, nice.
Yeah.
All right.
mm,
So I
Huh?
assume when you guys sign on, does it say Zoom workplace now?
Yeah,
Okay. So originally when I got on here, I was signed in with Carrie still, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm on her Zoom thing. Or I thought maybe they just upgraded it and I didn't know yet. So, okay.
threw me off for a second there.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I suppose I'm on her college one or something. I was like, oh well.
Clicked the wrong app or something.
Yeah, well, that's just because I signed in under my name, but then it brought her up originally, and I was like, oh, somehow I ended up in her college one, and I was like, well, I got it switched over to my name, but it still said that workplace or whatever, and I thought, oh, I don't know what's going on. So
New submission from Dome School. It's a little late, isn't
last minute, baby.
it? Really, 5:59. They're like, I gotta slide in there. Get in this thing.
They know we work under pressure and we can handle it.
They're gonna have the most complicated question that we didn't prepare for.
Aaron's got 30 seconds. He can find a photo quick.
Said go.
Every time we go to start on Dome Talk, we're all just sweat coming down. We're like, oh my gosh,
You know,
shaking.
Okay. Oh, it's about that time, isn't it?
I suppose, yeah.
I didn't get my water. Darn it. I'm gonna have to get up in the middle of it. Okay. Well, that's going. That's going. Let me let everyone in. Actually, if I turn off the waiting room, I think that does it. Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, middle. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dome Talk. Just going to give everyone a minute to get their audio going and connect up, and we'll get started. I just noticed me and Josh have the same shirt on.
Yeah.
Oh, no, slightly different. Slightly.
There's always got to be two of us, right?
I didn't notice until now, so it's good. I've only seen them all day, so it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks like everyone is in and connected, so I guess we'll get started. Yeah, welcome to Dome Talk. I am Aaron Moran, and I'll be moderating this talk and trying to post helpful links in chat and going through the pictures we have. We'll focus on the questions that came in before the meeting, and it's not too many today, so I might be able to get out on time today. We'll see. And then we'll do our best to get to any questions in chat. We try to stick to 1 hour, but typically we go over, so we completely understand if you need to leave early. For those who haven't been here before, I'll start with a short intro of who we are. Natural Spaces Domes is owned and operated by Dennis Johnson and Tessa Hill. Located in North Branch, Minnesota, we have a dome complex consisting of an office dome, 3 model dome homes, a screen porch dome, 2 workshop domes, and the mini dome, which is our option for a small living space. As always, we invite you to visit us in person for tours. Natural Spaces domes are special because they're designed to be easy to build, beautiful, healthy, energy efficient living spaces while still providing you the best housing value around. Our staff consists of 14 people, with Dennis, Tessa, and Derek leading the organization. Dennis is the dome guru. He has decades of experience as a designer, contractor, and builder. Having designed over 1,200 domes worldwide, he knows what works and what doesn't. His patented dome connector system is the best available, and he sees to it that someone is there to help you with your step of your dome dream, every step of your dome dream. Next, we have our project manager, Derek Miller. He joined the NSD team several years ago, bringing with him a lifetime of construction experience. He handles a wide variety of responsibilities, from collaborating with Dennis on projects and client contact to helping the shops refine building techniques. While he is deeply familiar with the dome construction process from the ground up, he is also our video guy, filming and creating educational videos, virtual classes, tours, etc. And today we're joined by Josh, our shop and projects manager. He came to us with a combination of work experience in construction, remodeling, and shipping management. So he oversees the production and shipping of your dome, as well as inventory and purchasing. If you guys want to say hi.
Hi, guys.
Okay. With that, I suppose we'll get started with the first question here was from our friend Brian Trippy of Trippy Acres fame. And he asks, do you have any recommendations on lightning protection for a high profile dome? We've already had lightning strike a tree about 40 feet away, so chances are definitely there. Would you install a lightning rod? Question mark. Also, planning on an EMP shield system. Any suggestions for other options would be appreciated. Thanks.
Nice, nice. That time of year, I guess the storms are rolling in, so it's a good question.
You or Josh want to take that one, or
Sure. Actually, I might, you want to throw that photo up? Might be good to kind of explain a little bit with the picture. That would help. But yeah, essentially it's kind of like any structure that you're trying to protect from lightning. Ultimately, what you want to do is give the lightning a course to follow that you can manage it a little bit. So in this particular dome, I believe it was struck by lightning. I know that one of the domes was struck by lightning. I think it was this one. And so the engineer, our engineer actually came up with this system that would, definitely help. And it has. And so this is the top of their cupola as we're looking at it from the inside, looking kind of straight up from the lower part of the house, I guess, looking up to it. And essentially what they did is they put a lightning rod right at the very top of the dome at the highest spot, which is usually where you want to locate it. And then they ran essentially grounding wires. That's what those red lines represent, are the grounding wires. And as you can see, they did 5 of them, and they essentially followed the pentagon of the dome, which kind of a dome is not really nicely split into fifths, but it basically is. For most of it, it kind of comes down and then it hits another pentagon and it kind of jogs a little bit. But essentially, they ran grounding wires from the very top of the dome, from a grounding rod down to 5 locations around the dome, kind of roughly where the pentagon led it to. And then they grounded it into a grounding rod into the ground. So usually that's a piece of copper that you just put directly, you embed it into the soil. And so when the lightning strike happens, it allows a pathway for the energy to go and get grounded, and it kind of minimizes the potential damage of heat and fire that could be caused from it kind of randomly going its own direction through wood or whatever else it was trying to travel through, that it could allow combustion and fire and stuff like that. So we could get into it a little bit more, but I know the picture kind of helps. And I don't know if that kind of, it maybe sounds overly simplistic. I think Dennis said that they also wired it through the sleeves, kind of trying
through all the hubs.
the entire dome hardware system to it to some extent, I believe. Is that what he was saying earlier, guys? You remember that conversation?
Yeah, that's how I took it, was that it was run from that top pent down through all of the hubs, going down
Yep.
those lines until it went to the ground rods.
Yep.
And there's actually some more details about this on our website. There's under like the dome system heading, there's a section called like Mother Nature versus domes, I think.
Yeah.
And this is like I think it was like lightning strikes in like 2008, I think it was something like that. And they kind of go through the history of how they came up with it, and it shows the pictures of where they are. And yeah, they're at the very top of the hill here. So this dome is the highest object around. You know, I guess aside from the antenna that may not even be as high as the dome.
Right, right.
And so it's gotten struck a few times. And I think they might have to replace the antenna, the rod, because it, you know, can get vaporized. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how they tackled that one.
And that is kind of part of the rod's job, so to say, is to take the brunt of all that. So you are correct. Usually a lightning rod, depending on the size and everything, needs to be replaced after a certain amount of strikes, depending on what kind of lightning rod you have. But it usually burns off a few inches each time. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so are we just talking about like the solid copper, I think it's like 6 gauge or something like that they use to ground your standard breaker box?
Yeah, that would work. It really, so when it comes to, yeah, they usually have the bare copper and coils that are specifically sold for grounding rod stuff that you can buy. And it's a certain gauge that's kind of set up. It could always be bigger. The bigger, the better. Of course, it allows the energy to travel a little more easily. Of course, this, I guess I don't know what the voltage is, so I shouldn't even say that, but yeah, that's what you want, exactly. So it's kind of like most things with the dome, stuff that's already in place for conventional structures or buildings also work perfectly fine and translate over to, you know, a dome as well. So it's the same stuff. You just go buy your big box store that's designed for, you know, lightning strikes basically. And they have the same grounding rods. You don't need any special hardware or anything like that. So yeah, it works perfectly. Yeah, and then, you know, the 5 points, most houses don't do 5 points, but I think the goal here was to make sure it would just be good. You know, so it might be a little overkill the way they did it, but better that than, you know, have a lightning strike. If the whole point is to mitigate it, you want to do whatever you can, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
This was a customer who did it of his own, and he's a engineer of some kind. So he, you know, probably thought it was fun to over-engineer the solution to this.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
have them
Looks
all
like
the
they're
different points
typically-
and have it grounded into 10 different points in the ground and all kinds of stuff, right?
It looks like they're typically 5/8 diameter to 3/4 inch diameter rods.
for the rod, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can buy like coils of the bare copper wire too. So yeah, there's some good stuff out there. You know, copper is real expensive right now, unfortunately, but yeah.
Times 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It is one of the better conductors though, so it works really good for that purpose. So yeah.
Worth
Yeah.
it.
It's cool to see the inside of your dome, by the way. That's
I was gonna
awesome.
say,
Yeah, it is.
that's a good backdrop for the webcam.
Yeah, it's coming along.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, cool.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you for the question, guys.
Thank you.
Go
Thanks.
to David in California. He's asking to vent or not to vent. They're building a two-dome home in the Reno area, which is climate zone 5. And after his research, he feels an unvented dome may be the best approach. Do you have any advice or input regarding vented or unvented build in that zone area or zone? And as a side note, they are going with radiant heat foundation and still deciding on if they're going to do spray or fiber insulation, which I believe plays into the answer on what we'd say
Mhm.
about that unvented, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start with that one, Josh?
Yeah, I can do this one. So for zone 5, we're recommending non-vented, with 3 to 4 inches of spray foam, and then the rest fiberglass, to meet the R60.
So this chart here, by the way, kind of goes over, here's your climate zone, here's like our recommended R value. Now the code might be 60, but this is what we recommend, and kind of the different amounts of different things that you would need in order to reach that. if you were gonna go with that method, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
R60 would be your minimum.
Yeah. Anybody that's been on Dome Talk for a while has heard Dennis many times say, if you build the code, you're building the worst house you can build. Because if the code requires something, that's basically the minimum. So Dennis typically likes to be a little bit above the minimum. And so that's why we have it sometimes above an R60, depending on where you're at. But there used to be a time where you could ventilate any structure on any climate zone. But then as, you know, buildings got higher performing and there's more use of air conditioning and different things, problems started to appear in certain areas. So like if you're in a moist climate zone, typically you don't want a ventilated house because it allows all that moisture within the home that can then condense on the ins, like if you're in Florida, for instance, it can condense on the backside of your sheetrock where it's that's the cold surface then, so it'll kind of condense on there. In Minnesota works great for ventilation. So there's a lot of things that play in that come into play, but in this particular situation, being on the drier side of the country, and the zone 5, you can kind of do it either way. But yeah, like Dennis says, if you're going for peak performance, the spray foam gives you that great R density, and seals everything up, which is really good for your insulation value. But it's also expensive. So that's why if you do a certain percentage to meet a certain requirement, then you can fill the rest of that up with fiberglass and save a little money, and you don't need to use a vapor barrier or anything, because at that point you're past the dew point in the insulation layer. So like Josh was saying, 3 or 4 inches would give you, you know, about let's just say you went 4 inches, that's R28. And so if you went with an R60 house, you're at like 47% of your R value is foam. And I think all you need is 40%, for instance, in zone 5. So that way you don't have to worry about vapor barrier. And so you get a couple little benefits to it.
And then you do want to think about your roofing underlayments though, so you're not doing a vapor barrier on both sides of the same on that plywood essentially, and then you'd be trapping moisture in the plywood. So it's something to look at when you're deciding if you're going to do like metal shingles or something that requires, you know, like an ice and water type membrane, which would be another layer of barrier, vapor barrier to that.
Yeah. I mean, the building science says you can do it, but if there's any mistakes, it can lead to failure. The foam can separate from the plywood. There's some different things. So foam is really a good product for insulation, but it does come with certain risks and it has to be applied properly. And you got to kind of have a lot of, you know exactly why you're doing it. And like Josh said, what's your roofing, and there's a lot of things. But the nice thing is you're in the dry part of the country.
Yeah.
And most of the challenges are fighting water, either liquid water or water vapor in this case. So the drier it is, gives you a little bit more leniency on all these options. So that's always a good thing for you. So.
Thank you, guys. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so our next question is from Dominic in Washington, and I'll probably get a few people with this one because we get this question pretty often, of advice on finding a contractor, especially a roofer. This one specifically, Dominic's asking about cupola installations. I mean, I think we cover this pretty often. They generally a standard roofer should be able to do it if they have the right instructions, right? So, I mean, do you guys have any particular advice on what to look for in someone that you think you trust to do your dome roof, or like install a cupola, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like doing your due diligence for any of your subcontractors, where you just want to kind of make sure that they come with some good referrals. Maybe they did some work in your area and you can do a drive-by and kind of take a look at it and see if it looks like a good quality job. But yeah, you're right, Aaron. That's how our Dan Newcomb, a roofer we work with all the time, who I would probably give credit as maybe the best dome roofer on the planet, actually. And that's the way he says it, is if you got a good roofer and with the instructions we provide, they should have no problem doing the job perfectly fine, And not that happens all the time. So you still got to do your due diligence, but
yeah,
that's definitely true.
and I would get the roofing manual and then provide that for them so that they have, you know, all of the best information possible to do the job correctly. If they're if they're a good roofer, when you show them this, they're gonna do it right, you know.
Here,
I
here's
think
a
the
couple
manual,
from the manual that kind of just show, you know, how you'd go about putting on underlayments, or how you'd exactly do the pattern with the triangles, because really with a properly done roof, you shouldn't need, caulking or any sort, or ridge caps or any sort of business that we've seen get done before. If you're properly, overlapping your shingles onto the correct triangles and whatnot. And as Josh said, sometimes they'll be reluctant maybe to buy our manual if you tell them, here, buy this so you can do our thing. Like, it's like $30, give them a copy in any format that they want. Like, make the barrier to them learning, I would say, as small as possible. Yeah.
yeah, and it's I think it's either 40 or 60 pages long, so there's a lot of information in there, but a good roofer can just kind of thumb through it in like 5 minutes and kind of see the details. They're like, okay, I understand this. This is how they address this. Or just have it handy so that as they're going, if they run into a spot they're not sure of, they can look into it. There's a couple of things like that second picture that Aaron showed that the manual still shows like tar paper in use, which we would not recommend. There's so many better underlayment options now. So there's some of it that needs to be updated, but that's also something a roofer would look at because all the logic of the whole manual still applies to the newer products. There's just some updated products since that particular manual was made, but and we're hoping to update it. We're trying to update it with a little bit of time we can, squeeze in for those kind of things. So hopefully we'll get it updated soon, but yeah, I think that'll take care of them for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks for the question, Dominic. Our next one is Celia, and see if she's here today, hopefully, because there's a lot of questions in this long question. So we'll kind of break it down here. Let's see. First one here is planning to put up a 36-foot high profile dome on a platform supported by screw piles. The platform will be flush with the riser walls, except in the back, where there will be a deck. The terrain below is steep and rocky. So with all that being the context, she has questions about actually putting it up, right? How do you like assemble the scaffolding and ladders so that you can reach the various parts of the triangles? What do you do for the last few rows where things get pretty high up? And also, given the terrain around the dome, is there any way to like how would you approach it? Or given that like one side has a pretty steep drop off, how would you actually approach it to be able to get on the dome to put up the panels and things like that?
Mhm.
So she's kind of looking for tips and tricks regarding safety, regarding how to approach it, how to get on that side, and yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'll just start off and then Josh, if you want to kind of take over, but I think the screw piles or screw piers, for those of you who are not familiar with that, essentially they get driven in the ground typically by a skid steer. And they're designed that when they reach a certain amount of resistance, and they have, a way to measure that with the device that drives them in. Once they reach a certain resistance, that means the ground pack at that level is hard enough that it's considered a stable for whatever the engineering requirement is for that screw pier. And so they're kind of nice because they're an ineffective way to get a pier system built. And you can kind of go from there, and there's cross bracing depending on how high it needs to be. There's other factors, but I'll kind of let you jump in there if you want, Josh. And then you know what, as long as we got the trippies with us, maybe you guys can let us know if you came up with any ingenious ways to help aid with putting some of the panels on. So for those of you that may not be familiar with trippies, they are currently building a dome. And they're not builders through their normal occupation. So they're learning a lot and they're doing a great job. And so sometimes people that have never done something oftentimes they'll come up with a real clever idea too, that maybe people that have done it for even decades haven't even thought of themselves, because they just started doing it a certain way and it worked and they just kept doing it. So, but yeah, Josh, if you want to kind of jump in on that, I guess, I just thought I'd establish what those three piers are, so.
So like he touched on briefly is that you would need to do cross bracing between all of those piers. And then from the aspect of how to actually build it, virtually from the inside, because otherwise you'd have to have, like a deck built around it to have scaffolding or anything on. But like you could do scaffolding on the inside of the dome and put the frame up. And then once the frame is put together, I mean, this would be it would be a little bit more difficult to do, but it is possible. I'm sure once you're doing it a little bit, you'll get in a rhythm, but once the frame is built, then I would use harnesses and tie off, and then with ropes, pull the panels up and attach them, virtually just climbing the structure. That way you're not using any kind of machinery or anything like that. I would put all of the materials inside and then haul them up and through.
Yeah, here's a picture of someone who is like just has a C-clamp on one of the panel pieces and you're just pulling it up, right?
Yep. Just like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
As well, I mean, kind of showing the kind of different harnesses you have. So this harness, if you can see it, I think Dennis was saying it's like for like timber removal or something. Like it's just kind of a standard harness that has a seat on it. So you fall and it's not just like it's not just a belt, right? Like it's a whole seat. But that's one way you can tie in. And then also, I guess it's kind of tricky to I have any pictures here. But like you can see the scaffolding on the inside. I guess the tough part is how do you tie off to a dome you're building from the bottom up? And if you have your scaffolding higher than where you're currently going, that of course helps. And it is pretty easy to walk on these, but for the first triangles especially, like you don't really have a good footing. And then at the very top, of course, you're just laying down. So there's all kinds of little things you got to figure out.
Yeah, there's little bits you'll have to kind of with trial and error figure out where you're tying off to. If you are able to tie off to your scaffolding as you go, or maybe you have to get creative a little
Yeah.
Now, one nice thing about Dennis's dome too is you can even tie off to any strut near you as you're working, and even if the strut isn't completed into a triangle, if you were to unfortunately fall, Dennis's dome system is so strong. I mean, that strut's not going to go anywhere. So you can kind of, even if you're tying off maybe even below where your head is, for instance, if you do fall, maybe you only fall 5 feet instead of all the way to the ground. Anytime you're getting above a certain height, obviously falling is not something that you want to have happen. And if it ever does, you want to make sure that something's going to catch you before the ground does. So, yeah.
Yeah. And here's an example of a house that, definitely was built on piers over a drop. And yeah, at a certain point, like maybe that deck was very helpful, or maybe they had to get some kind of a crane in there to help them get around the backside, especially with all those skylights, right? So a little bit of creativity. It really just depends on your spot. One of the questions that Celia had was about being able to build it like a grain silo and lift it up and build around the sides. And I mean, this isn't exactly that, but kind of. We had the top being lifted, and then riser walls. You can see their original ones were short, and they put in much taller ones here. So you can do that. Of course, that has its own challenges, right? If you're trying to build from the top down.
Yeah. I think, like going back to Dan Newcomb again, somebody who builds domes on a semi-regular basis. I mean, almost everything those guys do is off ladder and scaffolding, but it depends on your comfort level too. Some people do not feel comfortable on a ladder way up on it. I mean, some of those domes get you pretty high off the ground.
Yeah.
So it's kind of comfort level, and always, safety should always be the highest priority, of course. Did you guys, Did the Trippies have anything to kind of add to that with your experiences? I mean, I know you guys, it's kind of all fresh in your head probably, because it probably wasn't that long ago you were up there doing it yourself. So do you got anything to add to that maybe that we missed or would be helpful for new people?
We did a lot of non-OSHA approved maneuvers. Let's say that much. Being that we live on a farm, I've got access to a skid steer, so we used both the scaffolding that you can actually see back here. We used that for the first 2 to 3 courses. I think it was the third course, and we used also the skid steer bucket to lift us up and whatnot. Did exactly the same thing that you showed earlier. We just have a clamp that we'd hoist up the panels from the outside and nail them in there.
I would say for the struts at the very top, we got a scissor lift.
Yeah.
And that made it work
That
using a scissor lift for that. So if you can get that, that's useful.
it would, we didn't have to rent it. A friend had owned one, but if I had to do this again, I would rent one for sure.
Yeah.
That scissor lift made things so much easier and
Oh,
quicker. As for like safety stuff, you can tie off to a lot of stuff. There's all kinds of places you can tie off to. My personal experience was it got in the way to the point where it made it more dangerous for me.
Okay,
So
yeah,
if you're comfortable up there, I would wing it, but that's just me.
That being said, though, the other thing that he did, which I think is a good idea, is he actually put down a few tied, what are those things called?
Yeah, there's like anchor bolts that I got off Amazon.
Around the bottom of the cupola, and so he could hook in to those, whichever side he was on, and that is one of the main things he does when he's got his harness on, and that helps.
That is a good
Yeah.
idea.
A lot of this, actually, all of this stuff that we did, it's on our YouTube channel. Just search for Trippy Acres, and you can
See all the craziness.
But yeah, but in truth, it's really not that bad as long as you're not afraid of heights.
Yeah,
It's not that bad.
and the
yeah,
struts are really sturdy, so you really can walk on them, and it's solid.
yeah, absolutely on that, yeah. And well, and that's good. Thank you for your guys' perspective, because it's kind of nice to have the opportunity, you know, for somebody that's kind of just doing it and also that aren't builders by trade to see the creative solutions you came up with. But that was a good comment you made on the equipment. Equipment is expensive to rent, but I don't know if I can remember a time somebody regretted renting the equipment. You know, it's just like any tool, it makes it easier, safer, and faster typically. So if you do have access to some equipment, it may not be worth renting. You know, you pick your battles, maybe you rent something here and there for certain aspects of it. Like your guys' case, this is a lift for the very top, just because it really made it work good for you guys. So yeah, that's a good thing. And I mean, what if you rent a piece of equipment 2 or 3 times, or 2 or 3 different pieces of equipment for a week each, it's, you know, $500 a week, $600 a week, depending on what you're renting. So you might have another $1,500 into the job, but if it saves you a lot of time and effort and it's safe, it's probably worth the money, you know, so.
Yeah.
Yep, I would not recommend the painters
Scaffolding,
scaffolding. It's very wobbly. You should probably splurge just a little bit more to get an actual scaffolding system, but it worked.
It works.
Yeah.
I agree. I did a 49-foot dome with that same scaffolding one time, and I had a ladder at the very top of it. And I was at the very top of the ladder, reaching the very top of the dome, and I thought, yeah, the bigger scaffolding would feel a lot safer right now.
Yeah.
That's
This
good
one's
for
a
about
20
4 to 8 feet, and then it gets a little scary after that, you know.
This is a 21 foot, and I also had to do a ladder at certain points too, so I'm familiar.
Right. Oh, well, if you were afraid of heights before, you're not anymore, right? It's like after
Oh,
that.
that's for sure.
Well, thank you guys for helping chime in on that. It's kind of fun to have actual dome builders, current builders, you know, jump in and help out with new people. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy to help.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so looks like I think that was all the questions Celia had. I don't know if she's actually here. But I guess maybe she'll catch it on the YouTube channel after this is posted.
Sure.
So move on to Zoila Ortega, Virginia. And I think we answered this question last time, but might not have caught it during the last dome talk, but is there a directory of domes for sale? And you know, and then again, is there a state listing of dome builders and dome roofers? So there isn't a like a directory that we have state by state. I think going back to our previous answer that anyone can do it. They just have to, you know, be given the proper tools so they can. But as far as the domes for sale, there is, I mean, I would say, and we've done it here, is you can just go onto Zillow or something along those lines, and you can just search the keyword for like, you know, dome, right? And it actually works pretty well. I think I have a picture here that I was able to do. So let me share that screen here. So here I just went into a area of the country, and you can see here there's like more, and there's just a keyword. You're going to get things that aren't domes, but you will also get domes. So you have to scroll through it a little bit. But that seems to work pretty well if you just want to find domes that are around for sale. We do have our section of the website, domes for sale, but not everyone, you know, very few people come to us to have us list their dome. So it definitely wouldn't be an exhaustive list. Yeah, real estate sales site is, and just do the lookups. And that's probably what your best bet is. Yeah, anyone else have anything to say on that? But
No, I think that covers it. I mean, if we know of a really good dome roofer, we've gotten really good feedback from a customer, we're always happy to share it, but unfortunately, you know, like we got a lot of people building in New York, so you know, we might be able to recommend somebody, but yeah, it's really tough when it's all over, you know, when we're you know, we ship domes all over the world and all over the country, of course, and so sometimes it's hard to maintain a library, because if somebody does a good job, well, the next time somebody's building in that area, it might have been 5 or 10 years later, and what's changed. And so we would love to kind of maintain something, but it's a really difficult thing for us to do. But like Aaron said, a good roofer with the manual, and like Josh said as well, should have no problem doing the job right. So that should help out, hopefully. But it's always worth asking us, just in case. Like if you happen to be in certain parts of New York now, I think there's 3 or 4 domes simultaneously being built. So we could maybe say, hey, here's a contractor that is building domes currently. You might want to see if he could help you, you know, but that's about the best we can do, probably. So.
okay, and that was actually the end of our pre-submitted questions. So now we have one question. David had a follow-up in chat here. If we decide to go with fiber only insulation, what thickness would that have to be in comparison to the foam fiber setup that you recommend? And what are the pros and cons to fiber only?
So the R value of fiberglass is what they're talking about, is like fiberglass bat insulation. We use a high density. It's not laminated, so I think it's like 3 point. Do you got that chart you had up earlier, Aaron? Maybe you can throw that on. I think it's 3.4 or 6 per inch. 3.7. And then spray foam, you know, is an R7. I think the building code gives it an R6.5, but most spray foam guys look at R7 as the number they use. And so really you almost get double the R value per inch of insulation. So where that comes into play is the thicker your dome shell is, the less square footage you have on the inside of your dome. So if you imagine if you had a 2 foot thick dome or 1 foot thick dome shell, you know, the thickness of where the insulation is going to go, that could give you an extra foot diameter on the inside all the way around between those 2 houses. So if you were to get some of your insulation in spray foam, you get a lot of R value per a small amount of space, but it also costs, you know, 3 to 4 times more than fiberglass, probably even more than that actually. So it's a premium cost, but it does give you like the best bang per inch, so to say. So if you're really trying to, if you're gonna build a small home and you really don't want to lose too much of your interior space to a real thick wall for a bunch of fiberglass, that's where foam would be a good option. It's also very high performing because it seals up all the air leakage and everything else when it gets installed, where fiberglass would let air flow through it. So if there's air leakage somewhere in the structure, it can kind of come through the fiberglass a little easier than like spray foam. And spray foam is also, if it's close to solid spray foam, it doubles as a vapor barrier. So it saves you from having to put up a vapor barrier and do all the taping. Those are all the advantages to it, I guess. The disadvantages are just simply cost. It's something you typically have to hire out, so you can't do yourself, because usually it takes a rig that has to get the chemicals up to certain temperatures to spray it in properly. Those are the biggest downsides. And like Josh was talking about earlier too, it also has to be done correctly to not lead to possible complications. So it is higher performing, but means it requires more detail to installing it properly. Fiberglass, of course, is less expensive, but it is bulkier, so it does shrink the inside of your dome a little bit by getting that extra thickness to get the same R value. And it is vapor open, so it allows water vapor to get through it. And if it's a non-ventilated dome, it could condense on the cold side of the plywood if you're somewhere like we are in the Midwest or the northern part of the country. So the way we handle that is there's a product called a Smart Membrane. And really the product is supposed to allow water vapor to escape from the cavity where the insulation is, supposed to allow it to escape out, but prevent it from going in. So it's constantly trying to dry out where the insulation is from water vapor without letting any more in. But as anybody who's built for a few years knows, vapor barriers are never going to be perfectly sealed up. So there's always going to be a little bit getting in. And, you know, Dennis really likes to say, if you're going to do something where you don't have a ventilated dome, no matter what system you use foam, you use fiberglass, you use a hybrid. If it's all foam, I guess it doesn't really matter, but if it's hybrid or fiberglass, put like vapor ports at the very top of the dome so that if water vapor does get in through cracks or crevices in your vapor barrier or your smart membrane, and it would all accumulate towards the top center of the dome, it has a way to escape without letting water vapor in. So it's kind of, so there's some things, there's some strategies that you would incorporate to try to do that. But the all fiberglass non-ventilated dome shell system, smart membrane becomes the answer, and vapor ports on the top. And that's still, you know, a riskier system than if you did all fiberglass and it was ventilated, for instance. So just kind of depends. And again, like we were talking about earlier, if you're on the dry side of the country, your options are a little bit easier to choose because it's not so critical. But if you're like in the northeast part of the country, where you got a ton of humidity outside and you're fighting cold and all this other stuff, it's a little, you know, different. So you got anything to add to that, Josh? I didn't mean to take that whole question up there.
No, I think you covered that one pretty good.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, our concern was just the mixing of the foam, how you said sometimes it can go wrong, and carcinogens were brought up in the conversations I was reading and stuff. So that was what made me nervous about going with foam at all. But as long as it's done right, it sounds like it's a lot better.
Yeah. And we
And
do
the
have a
flammability
customer.
of it. I think the flammability made my wife nervous about it too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we do have a customer that's building currently in South Dakota, and she's going to be the first person, according to her anyway, the first person in the United States that's using a newer product from Canada. I guess it's been in use in Canada, but it's supposed to be a new foam product that's supposed to be a lot lower in carcinogens and have some small advantages. But as far as water vapor goes, it's still the same. So yeah, they seem to constantly be improving the product, but I think there's always going to be some upside and downsides to it. It just kind of depends on where you're building, what your R value goals are, your dome thickness. Like I said, if it's a small dome, it may not be worth giving up that square footage to have a real thick dome shell. So there's a lot of, it's kind of a complicated question, and it really is
right?
kind of more customer specific. So,
Okay. Thank you, Derek.
yeah, thank you guys.
Looks like the next question in chat about Rankies. We have the Trippies and Harmon. Trippies asked, when you ship Ranky shingles, how much waste do you plan for?
Yeah, so Rinkies, so on the, if we do asphalt shingles on a dome, since there is a certain amount of overlap, and then part of that shingle gets cut off, and sometimes you can use that cut off piece somewhere else unless it's real small and then it becomes waste. So we figure about 25%, 12% of that is figured overlap, and 12% of it is figured waste. With Ranky, we usually try to do, 10 to 12% because they're smaller shakes, so most of them don't get cut. Maybe I shouldn't say most of them, but all the ones in the middle of the triangle don't get cut. The ones on the edges do get cut, but usually you're cutting off a small percentage of that shake. And if you cut off more than half that shake, sometimes that shake can be used somewhere else also. But I mean, Josh, you and I have probably been on the dome itself doing about 12% on average.
Yeah.
And then we typically calculate the bare minimum and exactly what it'd be, add a certain percentage for overlap and waste, or in this case, just waste. And then, and you can bend those over and overlap them as well. So if we know what you're wanting to do, that comes into consideration. And some people with Rankies, and we don't recommend this, but some people just go all the way around and they don't do any cutting, overlapping, anything. We don't think it looks good and we don't really like it that way, so we don't recommend it, but some people do it. So the waste factor can kind of vary depending on your application, but we usually figure 10 to 12%, and then we will add usually a little bit extra, 1 or 2 squares, depending on the size of your dome, because it's always nice to have a little buffer in case you are a little heavy-handed on the waste. And it's also nice to have some extras around so that, a tree tips over, bounces off your dome, damages some of them, you have some backups or spares, so.
Mhm. The follow-up question was also roughly what's the cost difference between the aluminum and the asphalt shingles in say both labor and materials, and of course there's also the underlayment difference as well, right?
You want to grab that half of it, Josh?
Sure. As far as labor goes, I mean, I feel like it should be pretty similar. But I mean, because now you at a certain time you used to have basically fascia nails that they had to hand hammer into each one of them, and now they offer it as a coil, so you can use your nail gun and go, which really speeds up the process. But you're still looking at around probably 4 times the cost for underlayment, and then it's probably close to twice the cost for a square of Ranky shakes over asphalt shingles.
Yeah.
And then obviously you have to put into consideration that you'd be replacing the asphalt shingles before the metal and stuff like that. So really, in the long run, it balances out. It just comes to, what seems feasible now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think if you were to go, 100 years into the future, the Rankies would probably be the cheapest alternative. But yeah, up front, with all things considered, it's probably about triple the cost of Ranky versus asphalt. And of course, all your roofers are familiar with asphalt. They all have the tools for it. They work with it all the time. So, you also are easier to find. It's easier to find a roofer that will be happy to do the asphalt versus Rankies, where maybe they're like, well, I've never worked with this product. I have no idea what it's going to be like. So,
in which
yeah.
case they'd probably bid slightly higher.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But
my
look
personal view is if I could afford it, I'd go with the Ranky because I like the way they look, but I just like the durability and longevity of them. So, and they're made out of 100% recycled aluminum, which is pretty cool. So there's some little bonuses, but yeah, they are a premium option for sure. So.
Okay. Let's see. Nothing else has come into chat. Anyone else have anything else? Any follow-ups or clarifications or stories they want to share or anything? This would be the time.
Yes.
There's Dennis.
Here he is.
Yep, here I am.
Nice.
I just wanted to say that I've got quite a few true. See, I can't talk. And I had a stroke December 12th. So I relied on these 3 guys to map the way to the future. And I'm getting better. I can talk, don't talk like crazy. I can talk underlayments and felt and roof product. I'm at I can't talk. When it comes to conventional conversation, I've had a learning curve, and that's where I get big hang up. And we still see we have due this coming week with Dome School, and I'll be there and probably talk Dome talk quite freely. But in conversation here, conversational words are hard for me. But I just want to show you I'm still around. and I'm doing revisions on Dome stuff, all this stuff that's Dome related. I'm well into it. I have been doing it for some time. So I just want to say hi and welcome you all to Dome Talk.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis.
Welcome back.
Good to see you. Dome Talk's not the same without you, so. It's funny you made a cameo.
Yeah.
Nice. All
Okay.
right.
See, with that, actually, we actually have one question that came into chat just right at the end here. So I figure I'll throw it in here. It should be a pretty quick one. If during a roof replacement, I encounter struts that need to be replaced, how does one go about doing that? Is there any way to alleviate the load? What did you guys say?
You think, Dennis, you want to grab that one, or you want me to blab a little bit on that?
Blab other than that.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's one of our domes, to replace the strut's not a big deal. Dennis's hardware system is able to allow you to open up quite a bit of areas in the dome. So typically, if you're just like, oh, this one strut got damaged, I want to replace it. Oftentimes you're able just to remove the strut, get a new piece of wood. You know, the hardware is probably fine because it's made out of aluminum, extruded aluminum, and it's epoxy coated metal sleeve. So usually that's fine, and you can just replace the strut and put it back in. I mean, does that sound like the best course action, Dennis? What do you think? Just to go ahead and
take the bolts out.
yeah,
The strut comes out.
Yep. Yeah. And you can, you know, if it's not rotted to the point, you know, where it's like just mush or something, which hopefully that wouldn't be the case, you could pull it out and just put it on another piece of board and copy everything and cut it out and then just slip it right back in. Like Dennis said, you leave everything in there, it just slips right in, put the bolts right back through it,
Yeah.
and you're back in business. So if it's not our dome, then it kind of depends on a lot of stuff, but that's how we do it on our dome. So.
And a quick one here. Any recommendations on how to add a mini split given the unique / odd wall shapes?
Yeah, Dennis actually in his dome has 2 mini splits, and obviously the mini split needs to be level. So if there's not an interior wall or on your upper floor an interior wall that's a good location to mount it, it can go actually on the curvature part of the dome. You just have to kind of build like a little, you know, some way to kind of maintain a level spot for it to sit, like a little tiny
Platform.
yeah, like a little tiny platform or something for it to sit on. But usually you can kind of design it where it'll sit on one of your vertical walls upstairs. You know, if you have a bedroom up there and you have a wall that partitions the bedroom maybe from the rest of the dome, usually you have a continuous wall you can mount it on. But there's no concern or issue or complication to mounting it in a dome. So
We had a limit of 85 feet. And 85 feet was the length of the tubing that supplied the energy to the system.
yep. So wherever the mini split goes, the compressor, which is the other half of it, you have like an inside half and an outside half. And Dennis is saying you got a line set, they call it, and that line set's 85 feet long. So as long as you're not going more than that, you can pretty much put them anywhere. So
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
So that makes sense about like the inside part of it and just creating a level space for it. But what about, like the outside of it, the outside part, it isn't like a wall that you're going through, right? Like on the outside is just shingles and roofing. And I'd be afraid to sort of go through that roofing and kind of, mess up something and cause something that's going to leak.
Sure. Well, yeah, so typically, so there's a drain because you'll get condensation in any kind of air conditioning type unit. When there's a temperature differential, when warm air hits something cold, it usually can't hold as much moisture and it will condense some moisture. So there is a drain line that comes off of it. But typically all the drain line and the line set, which is simply the connection of electricity, and it'll have some command wires in there that tell the compressor, they communicate to each other, and all that stuff that goes to the compressor all goes within the dome. You don't need to have anything go through your roof. Typically, like, so if it's on a wall, you just run it down your wall through your floor system. That's where Dennis said you have the 85 feet to work with. The drain, typically, depending on if where your plumbing system is, usually people try to tie it into part of a vent or somewhere in their plumbing ventilation / drain system, wherever it could be, easily added into it. But typically you don't have any protrusions through the roof because the compressor part outside is usually on the ground. So you just come all the way down the ground and go to your riser walls, and then you just come out your riser wall, which is your vertical wall, and you just go right into the compressor from there. And they do make special, like, little housing units that you can put in your siding that kind of incorporate in your siding and allow a nice transition for the line set to come through. And you can, seal it up with, spray foam on the inside and kind of clean it up so no bugs can get through and stuff. So they do have all those pieces and parts available for them for professional installation. But you shouldn't really have to go through the roof for any reason. So you don't have to worry about that part anyway, because you're right. The less protrusions through the roof, the better, because every protrusion through the roof is a potential leak spot that, needs to be flashed or addressed properly so it doesn't leak. And if you don't have to have that, that's always nice. So,
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I guess you could even, like, if nothing else, just kind of put it on some sort of like build a like table or a bench for it, right? It doesn't even necessarily, like the inside part, it doesn't even need to be attached to the wall necessarily, right?
It usually is not.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So like in Dennis's, you got two of them in your dome, Dennis, right? You got the one way up, high up on the dome, which is designed to kind of essentially cool the entire dome. And it does pretty easily. Of course, back to the insulation qualities of the dome, it doesn't take a lot to do that. But then in the bedroom and in the downstairs main bedroom, since you can close both doors and kind of close that off to the house, there's a small one that serves the bedroom that I don't think you hardly use, do you, Dennis? Maybe just
Well,
couple
the
times a year.
bedroom dome is, the bedroom one is the one we use.
Oh, okay. Don't use the big
When
one.
we just vaguely use that tall one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, and I know we're in Minnesota where I'm sorry, Dennis, what's that?
I've got one unit outside, fan coil unit outside, handling 2 units. And the manufacturer tells you what you can do.
Yeah. I think some of those can even handle up to 6 units. So if you had a lot of bedrooms and you wanted to have every bedroom to have its own ability to control its own temperature, I think some of those newer compressors now can handle up to 6, like head units, they call them, on the inside of your house, wherever you want them. So, which is nice. Keeps the cost down. You don't have to have a compressor for every single unit. So, yeah.
Let's see, well, I guess can continue on with the chat questions that keep coming in here. We have
There's one more.
asking, building a mini dome in Mariposa, California, but to be permitted, the county wants 800 square feet minimum for an ADU, but the mini dome is 525. What would you recommend to get up to 800 square feet in a dome about the size of a mini dome?
Wait, what's our new upscaled mini dome, Dennis? Have we gotten that to 800 feet yet?
Yeah, not quite.
Okay.
You can add in a vestibule, in a different shape. Maybe some room gets added on.
like an extension or something, or
Yeah.
yeah. Like how
38
much
square
would you have
feet
to
is a
go?
33-foot diameter dome.
Yeah, because we have been talking about that with a larger mini dome. I guess it'd be more like a mega dome maybe, but I don't know, mega one makes sense, but just a larger format version of that. Like a 3-frequency version, right, Dennis, where you're thinking kind of maybe I'm doing like a 36 or possibly a 40 even, and then partitioning it a little bit. So,
Yeah, I take 3/5 of it. What you do.
yeah. So in that case, like if it's a 40-foot, and this hasn't been done yet, but a 40-foot is 1,250 square feet roughly on the main floor. So if you took
Yep.
3/5 of it, you'd be at what, 700 feet, I think, just on the main floor.
Yeah, if you have 2 floors, then you have to.
They count one floor only.
Oh yeah, they don't count the second floor for the square
Yeah.
foot.
It'll be 750 square feet for a 40-foot dome on the main floor. So you could probably,
So it's easy to put a 50-foot entry extension onto it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, extensions can be used quite a bit. I mean, on the mini dome, we open up a lot of the dome. So to do an extension, you can do, but you gotta reinforce the corners a little bit, but you can, yeah, the domes can be opened up a little bit if needed. So, yeah. Cool, cool. I don't know how many of these mini domes, these things have kind of taken off the last couple of years. So we might end up with like 3 or 4 versions of them. So,
There's one west of Taos, New Mexico. And that one just opened up for reservations on a rental purpose.
oh, nice, nice. Yeah, it's funny you say that. About 2.5 hours ago, I was driving by Duncan Giles mini dome here in Arizona. I'm in Arizona for a few days here, and we have a customer just south of where I am that built a dome, and it looks really cool. I told him, I said, next time I come, I'll get a hold of you earlier, and I'll have to get some pictures of it because it turned out really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're cool structures. So.
Well, because that's all the questions we have. I did notice that the Trippy is standing in front of their dome from the outside here, and looks like it's looking pretty good there. Got some skylights in there,
Yeah.
and it's looking like it's wrapped pretty nice with the deck armor with the ice and water on top.
Yeah, Dennis, we liked your porch so much that the screen-in porch so much that we decided to turn it into a sunroom. So I thought I'd show you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sign is
That's what I like
beautiful.
to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And if anybody wants people to build specialty roofs off of domes, these are the guys to call because they did a phenomenal job with this. The cutting they did was precise, so they're good. They're good builders, good builders.
I love birds' mouths.
Don't we all? Yeah.
And
And I
just don't
know-
expect it to be done anytime soon.
Right,
And I
right.
know you were the builders. I might have added quite a bit of thought or detail.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we're learning a lot and having fun doing
Very
it.
much.
Yes.
Yeah, having fun, that's the key, right? As long as you're having a good time, everything's easy to deal with. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah. You guys are like model do-it-yourselfers, right attitude, you put in the research, you make sure it's done correctly. That's the best. So good job, guys.
Well, thanks. We're trying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess with that, we're at 7 o'clock exactly. So I guess that works for us here. Yeah, thanks for coming to another Dome Talk. It's been fun to have you. Yeah, hope to see you back next month again. And anyone going to Dome School, we'll see you in person
Yeah.
Bye,
Next
everybody.
week.
next week.
All right, everybody, have a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, see you guys. Bye.
All right.